They weren't supposed to evolve at all, Director Pax said, tapping his 7 digits against the observation deck's railing. The statistical models gave them a 0.00004% chance of achieving spaceflight. Yet here we are. I shifted uncomfortably in my exoskeleton. As the Galactic Confederation's newest xenobiological threat analyst, being summoned by the director himself was concerning, especially when the subject was humans. Analyst Vox, do you know why you are here? Pax asked, his outer membranes fluctuating in what our species considers a smile. It wasn't reassuring. I assume it relates to the Sol system inhabitants, sir, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The bipeds who reached our outpost last week? Pax laughed. Not the melodious trill of our kind, but a harsh, choppy sound he'd picked up from studying too many primitive species. Reached our outpost. Is that what they are calling it in the lower divisions? They didn't reach anything. They crashed through our security protocols, bypassed 3 layers of quantum encryption, and sent us a message translated into 27 Confederation languages. Languages they shouldn't even know exist. My secondary heart palpitated. That's impossible. Impossible? Hey, welcome to humanity, Analyst Vox. The species that makes the impossible their daily routine. Pax gestured toward the holographic display occupying the center of the room. Computer display Earth historical development timeline, military focus. The display flickered, showing a blue-green planet rotating slowly. These creatures evolved on a death world. Gravity nearly twice what we consider comfortable. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would be toxic to most Confederation species. Extreme temperature variations that would kill any rational species. And predators. So many predators. Pax's voice dropped to a whisper. Yet somehow they became the apex predator. Not through physical superiority, mind you. It's through this. The display zoomed in on a primitive human wielding a sharpened stick. Tools? I asked, confused. Not just tools. Creativity. Pax spat the word like a curse. These creatures went from sharpened sticks to nuclear weapons in less than 10,000 years. Do you have any idea how aberrant that is? The Jaxori took 50,000 years just to discover agriculture. I stared at the display as it rapidly cycled through human history. Spears, bows, swords, gunpowder, cannons, firearms, bombs, missiles, nuclear weapons, laser defense systems, and finally their crude but effective faster-than-light drive. But surely they must be peaceful to have survived such rapid development, I suggested hopefully. Pax laughed again, that unsettling not our species laugh. But, oh, that's the most terrifying part. Computer, display Earth conflict timeline. The hologram changed to show a planet almost continuously at war with itself. Regional conflicts, global wars, civil unrest, revolution after revolution. They never stopped fighting each other. Never, yet they still advanced. Any rational species would have destroyed itself. But humans? They turned war into a catalyst for innovation. Every conflict pushed their technology forward. Every catastrophe made them more resilient. They thrive on chaos. Vox. They eat disaster for breakfast and wash it down with a cup of existential crisis. So what's our strategy, Director? Containment. Too late for that. A new voice announced from the doorway. I turned to see Commander Trill entering, her combat exoskeleton humming with barely restrained energy. The most decorated military officer in Confederation history, she'd faced down the Hive Mind Collective and lived to tell about it. Even she looked worried. The humans have already made contact with the Zolari Trade Federation, the Quantum Republic, and she hesitated, mandibles clicking in distress, the Morgrath Dominion. The Morgrath? I gasped. Even Pax's membranes paled. The Morgrath were the Confederation's oldest enemy. Ruthless, calculating, methodical conquerors who had never known defeat. Yes, Trill continued, and according to our intelligence, the humans have proposed an alliance. With which faction? Pax demanded. Trill's compound eyes flickered in what might have been amusement. All of them. That's not how interstellar politics works, I said, forgetting my place. Species align with one faction. Multiple alliances would create conflict of interest. Exactly, Trill said. The humans call it playing both sides. Or in this case, all sides. They are simultaneously negotiating technology exchanges with the Zolari, cultural integration with the Republic, and military cooperation with the Morgrath. But that's, I struggled to find the words. Insane? Pax offered. Illogical? Dangerous? Yes, all of that. And brilliant. Because no faction can afford to move against them without potentially strengthening the others. The hologram shifted again, showing a human vessel, primitive by our standards, yet somehow elegant in its brutal efficiency. That's the U.S. Curiosity, Trill explained. Their flagship. Named after an emotion that most Confederation species evolved beyond eons ago, the drive to explore simply for the sake of exploring. Inefficient, I noted. Yes, and that's why we never saw them coming, Pax said. Our models predicted they would continue optimizing their society before reaching for the stars. Instead, they built ships with barely adequate life support, strapped themselves in, and launched into the void, for fun. For? The concept was almost unintelligible. They recreate danger for entertainment, Trill added. They climb mountains without anti-gravity. They dive into oceans without breathing apparatus. They jump from heights with nothing but fabric to slow their fall. They deliberately scare themselves with fictional stories. For fun. I felt my third stomach churn with anxiety. So what's my assignment, Director? Pax and Trill exchanged glances. We are sending you to meet them, Pax said finally. My exoskeleton locked up in shock. Me? But I'm just an analyst. I have never even left Confederation space. Exactly, Trill said. You are uncontaminated by preconceptions, and frankly, we need fresh perspectives. Everyone who's met the humans so far has come back, changed. Changed how? I asked, dreading the answer. They have started asking questions, Pax said quietly. Dangerous questions. About our society, our traditions, our limitations. The hologram changed again, showing a human female with dark skin and bright eyes. She was smiling, showing her teeth in what humans apparently considered friendly rather than threatening. This is Ambassador Maya Jackson, Trill said, your primary contact. She's requested a Confederation liaison to help facilitate human integration into galactic society. Integration? I squeaked. They have barely achieved spaceflight. Most species spend centuries in probationary status. Yes, well, the humans have declined our standard protocol, Pax said dryly. When informed they would need to prove their civilization's stability over the next 200 years, Ambassador Jackson laughed and said, and I quote, "Honey, we don't have that kind of patience." And the Council agreed? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The Council is divided, Trill admitted. But the humans have already shared some technological innovations that have caught everyone's attention. Like what? I asked. Like this. Pax handed me a small device, no bigger than my primary digit. They call it a music player. It contains what they consider art. I examined the primitive-looking object cautiously. Art is inefficient. We evolved beyond it millennia ago. Just try it, Pax said, with that unsettling, not our species smile. I placed the device against my auditory membrane as instructed. And my world changed forever. Sounds, patterns, harmonies I'd never imagined possible. Vibrations that resonated with parts of my biology I didn't know existed. I felt my heart's racing, my fluids pumping faster through my system. Emotions, long suppressed evolutionary baggage that our society had engineered away suddenly flooded back. I yanked the device away, trembling. What was that? They call it Mozart, Trill said softly. One of their thousands of composers. It made me feel. I struggled to articulate the alien sensations. Yes, Pax said grimly. That's what they do. They make you feel, and think, and question. 3 days after receiving human literature, the Quantum Republic's central AI requested individual rights. You see our problem, Trill added. Humans create without limits, without the restraint that evolution and logic demand. They imagine things that cannot exist, and then they build them anyway. I stared at the smiling human in the hologram. She didn't look dangerous. But then the most venomous creatures rarely do. Your mission, Pax continued, is to understand them, learn their weaknesses, find out how they think, and most importantly, determine if they can be controlled. And if they can't? I asked. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in the director's compound eyes. Then may the void help us all. 2 standard cycles later, I found myself aboard the U.S. Curiosity, being led through corridors that were simultaneously primitive and baffling. The ship's design made no logical sense. Recreational spaces occupied prime central locations, while critical systems were scattered throughout. Efficiency had clearly been sacrificed for what the humans called comfort and morale. First time meeting humans? Asked my guide, a junior officer named Tom Wilson. He was shorter than Ambassador Jackson, with pale skin and facial features that seemed perpetually amused. Is it that obvious? I managed, trying to keep my secondary appendages from trembling visibly. Well, you have been calculating escape routes since we left the airlock, he said with a grin. And you flinched when I offered to shake hands. Your species has very strange customs, I said carefully. Tom laughed. Buddy, you don't know the half of it. Wait until you experience karaoke night. Before I could ask what this ominous-sounding ritual entailed, we arrived at what Tom called the conference room. Inside, Ambassador Jackson was waiting with several other humans and, to my shock, representatives from 3 other Confederation species. Analyst Vox. Jackson greeted me warmly. Welcome aboard the Curiosity. I see you have met Lieutenant Wilson. Please join us. I took my place at the oddly round table, noting that hierarchical seating arrangements were absent. Another inefficiency. We were just discussing the possibility of a cultural exchange program, Jackson continued. The Xanthi have offered to host human artists on their homeworld, while we will be sending some of our scientists to study Morgrath battle tactics. You are exchanging military secrets with the Morgrath? I asked, unable to hide my alarm. A Morgrath representative, General Scorn, according to my briefing, made a sound like grinding metal that apparently passed for laughter in their species. The humans have already shown us their military secrets, Analyst Vox. And they call them action movies. Apparently, they have been imagining ways to defeat species like ours for centuries. For entertainment, Jackson added with a smile. Yet you still wish to ally with them? I asked Scorn. The Morgrath respect strength and innovation, the general replied. Humans possess both in abundance. Their creativity in combat scenarios is unsettling. What Ambassador Jackson has proposed, interjected a Zolari trade minister, is a new type of interstellar cooperation, one based not on factional alignment, but on mutual benefit. That's unprecedented, I said, struggling to process the implications. So are we, Jackson replied with a wink. That's kind of our thing. But the Confederation Council will never approve. Oh, we are way past approval stages, Tom interrupted cheerfully. While your council was debating whether to let us join their club, we started our own. You? What? The Human-Aligned Cooperative, Jackson explained. Open to all species who wish to engage in free exchange of ideas, technology, and culture. No probationary periods, no hierarchies, just beings working together. In just 3 standard cycles, the Zolari minister added, they have already attracted 47 species to their alliance, including, as of this morning, my government. I felt the room spinning around me. This couldn't be happening. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was being rewritten by a species that still burned fossil fuels. Don't look so worried, Analyst Vox, Jackson said kindly. We are not here to conquer the galaxy. We just want to make it more interesting. Interesting is dangerous, I replied automatically. Exactly, Tom exclaimed. Now you are getting it. As the meeting continued, I observed in growing horror as species that had been enemies for generations found common ground under human guidance. The Morgrath and Xanthi, who had fought 3 devastating wars, were now discussing collaborative entertainment media. The Zolari, notorious for hoarding technology, were eagerly sharing trade secrets with former competitors. And through it all, the humans kept introducing new concepts, new questions, new ways of thinking that systematically dismantled millennia of established protocol. When the meeting finally ended, Ambassador Jackson drew me aside. Walk with me, Analyst Vox. I want to show you something. She led me to what humans called an observation deck, another inefficient use of space that existed solely for viewing the stars. Beautiful, isn't it? She asked, gazing out at the void. It's space, I replied, confused. It's the same everywhere. Jackson laughed. And that right there is why we terrify you. I beg your pardon? Your species, most species in the Confederation, evolved to see patterns, to categorize, to find stability and safety in the predictable. It's a good survival strategy. She turned to face me. But humans, we evolved to see possibilities. Where you see just space, we see new worlds to explore, new phenomena to study, new ways of existing. That's irrational, I said, inefficient. Absolutely, she agreed cheerfully, and that's our superpower. We don't optimize. We improvise. We don't plan for perfection. We experiment and adapt. Your people spent 10,000 years engineering the perfect society. We spent 10,000 years telling stories around campfires about things that never existed and never could. And that makes you dangerous, I said quietly. Jackson's smile faded. It makes us human. And yes, sometimes that's dangerous. We have nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I can count. But we have also created music that can make alien species weep, art that can transcend language barriers, and ideas that can transform enemies into allies. The director believes you will destabilize the Confederation, I admitted. Oh, we definitely will, she replied with disconcerting honesty. But we will replace it with something better, something more adaptable, more creative. And if we resist? I asked. Jackson's expression turned serious. That would be unfortunate. Not because we'd fight you, though we would if necessary, but because you'd miss out on the most important thing we have to offer, which is, well, a future that's not just efficient but meaningful. It's not just stable but alive with possibility. As I stared into her alien eyes, I realized with sudden clarity why my superiors feared these creatures. It wasn't their technology, which was haphazard at best. It wasn't their military, which was fractured and disorganized. It wasn't even their alarming ability to form alliances. It was simpler and more terrifying than that. Humans made you want to be more like them. And as I stood there, surrounded by the inefficient beauty of their ship, listening to the chaotic harmony of their voices from the nearby recreation room, feeling the unfamiliar stirring of long-suppressed emotions, I realized I was already changing. The species that shouldn't exist had begun to change everything. And somewhere in the depths of my engineered psyche, a small, irrational voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing after all. I had been trained to catalog and analyze alien species with detached precision, need to observe, document, and report without personal involvement. My education on Homeworld had emphasized that emotional responses were evolutionary remnants, vestigial and dangerous. Logic was our path forward. So why was I now sitting in what humans called a movie night, watching fictional light patterns projected on a wall while consuming nutritionally inefficient popcorn? You are going to love this one, Tom Wilson whispered as the lights dimmed. It's a classic. Star Wars, A New Hope. Is this documentary footage of human conflict? I asked, attempting to maintain analytical distance. Tom nearly choked on his beverage. No, No, it's completely made up. Fiction, entertainment. You expend resources to create elaborate falsehoods. I couldn't comprehend the logic. Just watch, Ambassador Jackson said from my other side, her eyes reflecting the screen's glow. What followed was incomprehensible. Faster-than-light travel represented inaccurately. Impossible weapons. Humans in disguise as other species. A mystical energy field that defied known physics. A space station the size of a moon, destroyed by an implausible design flaw. None of it made sense. None of it was real. And yet... "You are crying," Tom observed as the credits rolled. "Do your people cry?" I touched my facial membranes, surprised to find them secreting emotional fluid. This is unusual. A malfunction, perhaps. "It's called being moved," Jackson said gently. "The story resonated with you, but it wasn't real." I protested. "The technology is impossible, but the physics absurd. The characters behaved irrationally." "And yet you cared what happened to them," she replied. I couldn't deny it. Something about the narrative had bypassed my logical safeguards and triggered primitive emotional responses. I had felt things. Feared for characters who never existed, rejoiced at their implausible victory. "This is how you conquered the Confederation, isn't it?" I asked suddenly. "Not with weapons, with stories." Jackson smiled. "We are not conquering anyone, Analyst Vox. We are just sharing who we are. Stories like this one trained your people to imagine impossible solutions," I continued, the realization dawning. "To conceive of technologies beyond current limitations. To believe victory is possible against overwhelming odds." "Pretty much," Tom agreed cheerfully. "You should see what we came up with after watching The Matrix." Before I could inquire about this other fictional narrative, my communication implant buzzed urgently. Director Pax. A priority summons to Confederation headquarters. "I must return," I told Jackson, rising unsteadily. The emotional after-effects of the movie still lingered in my system. "Of course," she said, her expression suggesting she understood more than I'd conveyed. "We will continue our cultural exchange when you return." "If I return," I said, uncomfortable honesty slipping past my professional facade. Tom clapped me on my dorsal appendage, a gesture I now recognized as friendly rather than threatening. "Don't worry, buddy. The cat's already out of the bag." "I don't understand that reference," I admitted. "It means once change begins, it can't be easily contained," Jackson explained. "Even if your superiors disapprove, what humans have started here will continue." I departed the curiosity with conflicting emotions. A part of me, the logical, trained analyst, recognized the humans as an existential threat to Confederation stability. But another part, a part I hadn't known existed until recently, was reluctant to leave their chaotic, vibrant presence. The Confederation Central Station was in unprecedented turmoil when I arrived. Species that normally moved in orderly patterns through designated pathways were clustering in discussion groups. Information terminals, usually displaying official bulletins, now showed human entertainment media. A group of juvenile exanthi were attempting to replicate a human dance ritual in the main concourse. Director Pax met me at the security checkpoint, his membranes tight with stress. "Report, Analyst Vox. How bad is it?" "Sir?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The human influence. Have they compromised you already?" His compound eyes scanned me suspiciously. "I have maintained professional distance while gathering data," I replied automatically, ignoring the lingering emotional resonance from the fictional Star Wars still affecting my tertiary ganglia. "Good. Follow me. The High Council has convened an emergency session." This was unprecedented. The High Council, composed of the 12 most advanced species in the Confederation, typically met once per standard cycle. Emergency sessions had occurred only 3 times in recorded history, during the Morgrath Wars, the Quantum Plague, and the Void Incursion. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," Pax explained as we hurried through security protocols. 47 species have formally joined the Human Alliance. Another 29 have requested membership. The Zolari Trade Federation has begun sharing restricted technology with non-aligned worlds. The Quantum Republic's Central AI has demanded the right to create art without practical application. I observed similar behavioral changes aboard the human vessel, I acknowledged. Changes? You mean corruption, Pax snapped. These humans are spreading ideological contamination faster than any pandemic. They have introduced concepts that are destabilizing millennia of careful social engineering. We entered the High Council chamber, a perfectly symmetrical dodecahedron where each councillor occupied an identical station according to the Confederation's founding principles of equality through uniformity. Except today, the chamber was in disarray. Several council members had abandoned their designated positions and were clustered in informal discussion groups. Others had modified their communication interfaces with colorful, non-regulation decorations. One was producing arrhythmic sounds with a human musical instrument. You see? Pax hissed. Chaos. High Councillor Merrick's called the session to order. As the oldest living member of the most advanced species in the Confederation, Merrick's had led the council for over 300 cycles. Today, his typically immaculate exoskeleton was adorned with what appeared to be human jewelry, metal and mineral fragments arranged in aesthetically pleasing but functionally useless patterns. We face an unprecedented crisis, Merrick's began. The human species has introduced dangerous ideological contamination throughout Confederation space. Their concepts of creativity, individuality, and entertainment threaten the stability upon which our society is founded. Murmurs of both agreement and dissent rippled through the chamber. Furthermore, Merrick's continued, they have bypassed established protocols for species integration, formed unauthorized alliances, even shared restricted technologies without proper oversight. They have also created beautiful music, interjected Councillor Zarn of the Xanthi, typically the most disciplined and protocol-adherent member of the Council, and introduced fictional narratives that explore ethical dilemmas our society has ignored for generations. Pax tensed beside me. See? Even the Xanthi are compromised. The Confederation has maintained peace and stability for 12,000 cycles by following logical principles, Merrick's reminded the Assembly. Predictability ensures security. Standardization ensures equality. Rational resource allocation ensures prosperity. And stagnation? A new voice entered the chamber. Ambassador Jackson stood at the entrance, flanked by Tom Wilson and several other humans I didn't recognize. Behind them were representatives from dozens of species, including shockingly general scorn of the Morgrath Dominion. This council session is closed to non-members, Merrick stated, though his voice lacked conviction. We were invited, Jackson replied, nodding towards several council members who looked distinctly uncomfortable. Traitors, Pax muttered. Jackson approached the center of the chamber, ignoring traditional protocol that required visitors to remain in the observation periphery. Councillors, I understand your concern. Humans are disruptive. We are unpredictable. We challenge established norms. From your perspective, that makes us dangerous. You threaten the very foundation of Confederation society, Merrick stated. Do we? Jackson asked. Or do we simply offer alternatives? The freedom to choose different paths? The opportunity to experience the universe through new perspectives. Such freedoms lead to chaos, Pax interjected. Lead to conflict. To inefficiency. Sometimes, Jackson acknowledged. But they also lead to innovation. To adaptation. To growth. Tom stepped forward, activating a holographic display. Your Confederation has maintained the same technological base for over 5,000 years, with only incremental improvements. In the 3 months since we encountered your outpost, human-inspired collaborations have produced these. The display showed a series of technological breakthroughs, a medical device that accelerated healing using principles from human fiction. A communication system based on human music theory that increased efficiency by 340%. A power generation method inspired by human dance rhythms that produced zero-waste byproducts. Really impressive, but at what cost? Merrick's challenged. Your influence has disrupted established hierarchies, encouraged non-productive activities, and diverted resources to non-essential pursuits. Like happiness? Jackson suggested. Like wonder? Like joy? Evolutionary baggage, Pax dismissed. Primitive emotional responses that advanced species outgrow. Or suppress, I heard myself say, surprising everyone including myself. All eyes turned to me. I hadn't intended to speak. The proper protocol required analysts to observe and report, not participate. Yet here I was, violating thousands of years of tradition because I had experienced something new, something that mattered. Analyst Vox, Director Pax warned, remember your position. My position has changed, I replied, astonished by my own boldness. I have observed the humans directly. I have experienced their art. I have participated in their recreational activities. And I have concluded that our assessment was incomplete. You have been compromised, Pax said flatly. I have been awakened, I corrected. Humans don't merely create without limits. They create because they recognize no limits. Where we see impossibility, they see opportunity. Where we seek stability, they embrace change. I turned to address the Council directly, violating another protocol. Our species suppressed creativity because we feared its unpredictability. We engineered emotion out of our societies because we feared its intensity. We standardized our cultures because we feared diversity would lead to conflict. And we were correct, Merrick stated. Before the Confederation, galaxies burned in emotional, creative chaos. Perhaps, Jackson interjected. But there's a difference between fearing fire and eliminating it entirely. Humans never stopped playing with fire. We just learned to control it, to respect it, to harness it. And occasionally burn down our own civilizations in the process, Tom added with characteristic humor. You admit your approach is dangerous, Pax seized on this. That proves our point. Life is dangerous, Jackson replied simply. Growth requires risk. Evolution demands variation. A species that eliminates all unpredictability eventually loses the ability to adapt to genuine threats. The chamber fell silent as her words resonated. Many council members shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing truth in her assessment. We don't want to destroy your confederation, Jackson continued gently. We want to enhance it, to help it evolve, to introduce enough chaos to prevent stagnation without triggering collapse. And if we refuse? Merrick asked. Jackson smiled. Then we will respect your decision. The human-aligned cooperative will continue outside Confederation space. Those who wish to join us may do so. Those who prefer your stability may remain. We offer choice, not conquest. Choice leads to division, Pax argued. Division leads to conflict. Only if you define difference as opposition, Jackson countered. Humans contain multitudes of contradictory beliefs, desires, and goals within our single species. We disagree constantly, sometimes violently. But we have learned that diversity of thought drives innovation. Opposition breeds synthesis. New ideas emerge from the collision of incompatible perspectives. General Scorn stepped forward, his massive exoskeleton creaking ominously. The Morgrath Dominion fought 3 wars against the Confederation because your uniformity threatened our identity. We sought to destroy you because we saw no possibility of coexistence with beings who demanded conformity. The council members tensed at the Morgrath's approach, ancient fears resurfacing. The humans have shown us another way, Scorn continued. They do not fear our differences. They celebrate them. In 3 months of cooperation, we have resolved conflicts that persisted for millennia, not through compromise, but through creative synthesis. This is exactly my point, I found myself saying. The humans' greatest weapon isn't their technology or their adaptability or even their creativity. It's their ability to imagine alternatives, to envision what doesn't exist yet, to create new possibilities. Merrick studied us all for a long moment. You propose a radical restructuring of Confederation society. The elimination of controls that have maintained peace for 12,000 cycles. Not elimination, Jackson clarified. Evolution. Maintain your core principles of equality and cooperation, but allow space for diversity, for experimentation, free for play. Play is inefficient. Hacks objected, though with less conviction than before. Play is how humans learn, Tom replied. It's how we discover. It's how we connect. Something shifted in the chamber's atmosphere. Council members who had been rigidly maintaining protocol began to relax their postures. Species that had never interacted outside formal settings began exchanging direct communications. And then, incredibly, High Counselor Merrick's laughed. Not the measured, ritualistic sound that passed for laughter in Confederation formal settings, but a genuine expression of amusement. In 12,000 cycles, Merrick said, no species has ever suggested we simply play together. First time for everything, Jackson replied with a wink. The Confederation operates on precedent, Merrick noted. There is no precedent for this situation. Then make one, I suggested, abandoning protocol entirely. Create something new. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Voices overlapped in a cacophony that would have been considered disruptive and unproductive just days earlier. Yet somehow in the chaos connections formed. Ideas emerged. Possibilities multiplied. 3 cycles later, the Confederation announced the collaborative initiative for a creative development of program allowing member species to voluntarily participate in human-inspired cultural exchanges while maintaining traditional structures for those who preferred them. I was appointed the initiative's first director, much to former Director Pax's consternation. Tom became my human advisor, bringing his chaotic energy and inexplicable jokes to my previously ordered existence. You know why we really terrify species like yours? Tom asked me one day as we observed a mixed group of Confederation youth engaging in their first improvisation workshop. Because your creativity is unpredictable, I replied, reciting the official analysis. Nah, Tom grinned. It's because we show you what you have been missing, what you sacrificed for safety, the joy of discovery, the thrill of creation, the beauty of imperfection. On the observation deck, a young Xanthi was attempting to tell a story to a Morgrath juvenile. The narrative was confused, the logic flawed, the conclusion unsatisfying by any objective measure. Yet both younglings were fully engaged, their evolutionary differences temporarily forgotten in shared imagination. We fear what challenges our certainties, I acknowledged. Humans live in perpetual uncertainty, yet somehow thrive. That's our superpower, Tom said. We don't know what's impossible, so we try it anyway. Sometimes it works. And when it doesn't? He shrugged. We make up a story about the failure, learn from it, and try something even more absurd next time. Ambassador Jackson joined us, watching the interspecies creative exchange with evident satisfaction. The Zolari just transmitted their first non-functional art piece, she reported. A musical composition based on quantum fluctuations. Completely useless. Absolutely beautiful. The High Council will have opinions about resource allocation, I cautioned. Let them, Jackson replied. Art isn't about efficiency. It's about connection. About seeing the universe through another's perspective, about expanding what's possible. As I watched the Confederation's first generation of officially sanctioned creatives experimenting with human concepts, I understood at last why my species had feared them. Why we had engineered creativity and curiosity out of our genetics, and why we had built a society on predictability and control. Because once you glimpse possibilities beyond the known, you can never return to comfortable certainty. Once you experience wonder, efficiency feels hollow. Once you create without purpose, mere function seems insufficient. Humans hadn't conquered the Confederation. They had simply shown us what we'd forgotten, what we'd sacrificed, what we'd lost in our quest for perfect stability. They had reminded us that the universe isn't merely to be cataloged and controlled. It's to be experienced, explored, enjoyed. And perhaps most dangerously of all, they had reminded us that rules can be broken, that boundaries can be crossed, that the impossible is merely the not yet imagined. The species that shouldn't exist had shown us new ways to exist.